Welcome back to Money Majlis. Today's is a special episode on customer loyalty with a very special friend who has been loyal to me for 40 years and someone who's acknowledged as a guru of loyalty. But first, a short commercial break.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto-as-a-service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
Money Majlis is brought to you by E&, a global technology group.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Intellect Design Arena, driving digital adoption in banking and insurance.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Live Digital Bank, powered by Emirates NBD. Trust and innovation combined.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
My guest today in Money Majlis is Ajay Row, my MBA classmate from the Indian Institute of Management in Kolkata, India, 40 years back. Ajay is the founder and chairman of Customer Capital, a B2B loyalty company he set up in Mumbai a couple of years back. Ajay has nearly 40 years experience in data-driven marketing, digital, loyalty, analytics, and CRM across a variety of industries. He launched one of the first loyalty and data-driven marketing programs globally in the 1980s. Since then, he has developed and implemented programs across 65 plus countries. He has also built several companies and delivered numerous globally recognized case studies. In the past, Ajay has worked with the Taj Group, where he was Vice President CRM, and the Wonderman Group, where he was CEO for India. He has delivered scores of loyalty programs worldwide, as diverse as the Taj Inner Circle to Mauritius Tourism, to the, locally here, Landmark Group's Shukran program. Ajay lectures at the IIMs, also at NYU Stern, and is a classical guitarist, dog lover, and sailor. Ajay, welcome back to Dubai and welcome to Money Majlis. How are you today?
Very well, thanks, Shavur, for having me. Really appreciate this. And thanks for making us both seem so old. Yeah, 40 years we've been friends.
I know, wow. I know. Well, old, as you know, is just a relative term.
That's
We
true.
are both very young and, you go sailing every other weekend. So life's good.
Life's good, touch wood, yes. Sailing every weekend except during the monsoons twice.
Lovely. Amazing.
which is
We'll
lovely.
talk about sailing a bit later. But I want to start with a very broad question. You are a loyalty guru, a loyalty king of India, various names that are given to you, epithets. So I have to ask you a very general and broad question on loyalty. And I did a lot of reading, Ajay, in preparation for this discussion. And one report I read suggested loyalty programs globally are worth a significant $150 billion per annum. I had no idea. Spread across a variety of sectors, retail, airline, financial services, healthcare, and others. Now, I believe the American Airlines program, just an example, the frequent flyer program called AA Advantage is valued at $30 billion, whereas the entire airline group, and I just checked recently, is valued at less than $10 billion, right? So the market cap is 1/3 of the value of their loyalty program. How bizarre is that? But of course, it shows the merits of a well-run program. But what I read, Ajay, are two trends. One is customers today are less loyal than before and are looking constantly for more value, especially given the inflationary environment we are in. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. And B, the easy e-commerce access to brands and the rise of social media influence is somehow reducing the depth of loyalty. In this backdrop, obviously all companies, all organizations need a good loyalty program which can last for a long time. What are your thoughts, Ajay, on how loyalty programs are evolving and growing?
Shivo, several questions in one, right? But let's start at the basic. There's a difference between a loyalty program and loyalty, right? A loyalty program, a bit of a misnomer, is some combination of database, a currency, communication, some kind of brand, which causes people hopefully to be loyal, or at least to give you a repeat purchase at a fair price, right? So let's separate the two. What does the loyalty program do? Now, the loyalty program gives you 6 assets as a company. The first asset it gives you is a database. Now, when you were an airline, you vaguely knew that you had 180 bottoms and seats on this flight from A to B. But you didn't know which seat had which bottom. With the loyalty program, you got a unique number. And you have the ability to associate that unique number with the flight. Now, there's a lot of stuff you could do with that unique number. You could create a profile. So I knew not only when you flew, but I knew a little bit about you because you put up your hand, said, I want to be a friend, and you told me. But there's more that you got. Every time you call the call center, I know it's you. So there's transaction data, there's profile data, there's interaction data, many kinds of data. But there's more than that. You get the ability to put those different kinds of data together and create some kind of predictive score. Right? Now, I'm going to go back to when I got into this back in 86, when I used to work with ITC, and they said, direct marketing kuch hai, loyalty kuch hai, go and figure it out. It was supposed to be a 6-month assignment. It became a nearly 40-year career and counting, right? So I got packed off, and I had to create this database. And I realized that with a bunch of names and addresses, there's no value. But if I could add 3 variables, the industry the person worked in, the functional area the person worked in, and his level in the hierarchy of the organization, I'd have a score which had very good predictive value to help me predict transactions, right? So if you're senior in sales and marketing, the chances are in those days, if you're in a P&G or whatever, you travel a lot, but it would be very different from somebody who's, let's say, senior in finance who wouldn't travel that much, right? And so it went on. So the predictive value was a good indicator of how things would move.
Got it.
Remember, I'm talking about 86, 87. You spoke about A Advantage. This was literally just 4 years after they launched, because I think if I remember right, they launched in 82. And we launched in 87. So we started working on it in 86. So it gives you a sense of...
early days of loyalty programs.
Very, very early. And remember, these are the days before emails, before... I mean, we had telex machines in those days, right? You remember when we started working, right?
Course,
I mean, forget about fax came
way
later.
Before mobile phones.
Way before all of that stuff. Principles remain the same. So the first asset you get is data. Now, how you use data is what I think is critical. Now, the second asset you get is a communication channel that you own. Now, if you're foolish and you blow it by spamming the person whom you're talking to, who's put up his hand and said, I want to be a friend of yours, and you treat him with respect, he'll treat you with respect right back, right? Now, if I keep calling you 20 times a day, Shivo, at some point you're going to say, look, friend or no friend, I'm going to start ignoring his calls, right? That's what marketers tend to do. They tend to spam, which is really unfortunate. They tell you I get a 2% response rate, and they're very thrilled about it, but that's a 98% non-response rate. And 98% of the people whom you spoke to were taught that ignoring you has no cost.
Correct.
So they don't care. That's the second thing you get. And remember, with a communication channel you own, you don't have to pay a toll tax to Meta and to Alphabet in order to talk to your customer.
Correct.
Otherwise, all you're doing is making,
Correct.
Google and Facebook richer. Right?
You said that, sorry to interrupt, that there is no cost of ignoring, but I think there's a cost of brand erosion. If I keep getting an email I'm ignoring from company X, I'm going to feel irritated about company X.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that is the largest cost of inappropriate communication. I was just talking about the cost of delivery.
Correct.
The impact on the brand is, number one, you've eroded your brand. Number two, you educated your customers to ignore you. And how foolish is that? That is really not a good idea if you're responsible for a brand and the value that it creates, right? The third thing you get, so you got data, you got incidentally, I interchangeably, when I remember, say data and data. Do you know what the root word of data, the root of data
Datum?
is? Datum. What does it mean? And
Latin.
Incidentally, it's Latin.
Latin, No, I don't know. It means information, I guess. No.
It means that which is freely given. And it goes back to Sanskrit, it goes back to Latin, it goes back to many, many root languages where data is
the giver.
Is that which is freely given. The giver gives freely.
Really? I know.
So the most valuable commodity in the world today is that which is freely given.
Wow. Okay.
And think about it, data is freely given, right? People put up their hands and say, I want to be your friend, and they give you data for free. They don't charge you for it. And then you make lots of money out of it if you're not foolish.
Correct.
Right? The third thing which you get is you get a currency. And if you're foolish in your loyalty program and you don't manage that currency appropriately, it's value the same as the AED or the dollar or the rupee.
Yeah.
Right? What you want is you want to create disproportionate value for the currency. Right? And that is, and people who did this in the first place, people like American, for example, taught us that the mile is a fantastic currency. Right? Because the mile cannot be spent on anything other than travel.
Correct.
It's not like a dollar or a dirham.
Well, now they expanded to use for watches.
And we'll talk a bit about that in a minute. And there is a role for that, but we'll come back in a minute. But just hold that thought for a minute. For most of us, right, the ability to use the mile only for travel means I can't use it to pay my electricity bill.
Correct, you can't.
Right, which means that it has far more value. So a dollar worth of miles is far more valuable just because of the restriction on how I can use it. Right? So what happens is that all of us have this desire to travel, to see the world. And if we can do it for free, how cool is that? You create a currency with a redemption which has value.
Can I ask you a quick question on currency? I will forget this later. There are companies that give you a huge amount of currency for something you spend. Example, the telecom company here, if I pay 100 dirhams of a telephone bill, gives me 100,000 points. Now they add to the hundreds and thousands to make it sound big, but eventually the consumer knows that 100,000 points is worth probably 10 dirhams.
Yeah.
In your mind, does it make sense to have such a huge number to give up to a customer, just to make the customer feel good for some time?
The answer, I think, is what David Ogilvy said many years ago. The consumer is not an idiot. The consumer is your wife.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So if you treat consumers like idiots, they will recognize that you're treating them that way, and they will not be as patient and respectful as if you treat them with respect and patience.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
I think you and I have both been married for long enough to know that you don't treat your wife like an idiot and expect to emerge unscathed, right? Right?
Yeah,
so there you go. And the
not,
consumer's pretty much like that. And equally, I mean, it's husband. I don't mean to be sexist.
of course.
It's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the next thing that you get. The fourth thing that you get is you get the ability to recognize people. So you have long snaking queues in the airport, and they've got a short little queue which you go and join because you're platinum status, right? And you feel so good about yourself.
Feel so good about it, yeah.
Right? That difference, that you're different, you're worth something more to me, is incredibly valuable. So you'd argue that rewards and recognition are just two sides of the same coin from a cost perspective. Yeah. And you're right. But one works very, usually emotionally. You could argue there's a practical, advantage of not having to stand in queue for an hour and, I just have to stand in queue for a minute. And yes, sure. But the point about recognition is more around the emotional benefit.
Correct.
Right? And the redemption tends to be emotional but as well as quite practical. Okay, that's the fourth thing you get. The fifth thing you get, once you've created the currency and you've created the recognition, which make people care about, and this is the critical one, you can then create an alliance system. You can talk to other brands who want to talk to your customers and get the means to do so, which doesn't mean going to Facebook and Google, but means coming to you will be far more fair to them because you're going to benefit, they're going to benefit, your customer's going to benefit, in order to create a meaningful relationship. Right? Now, you're familiar with this. Airlines approach the banks, and the banks bought frequent flyer miles from them, and both the bank benefited and so the airline. Right? Now, we'll argue about the economics of that in a moment, but just keep the thought, the underlying principle was that both companies benefit, and so does the customer.
But what about an alliance of in the same industry? For example, Star Alliance. There, airline A is kind of tying up with airline B and C and D while they're competitors, right?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So, really, I think it's the ultimate give the customer the choice, right? Which is that Suvo lives in Dubai, and he'll follow ABC, right? Because that works for him. So let's say for argument's sake, he prefers Emirates because that works for him. Now, Ajay lives in, let's say, Delhi, right? And prefers Air India because that works for him. Now, I may also prefer Emirates, where I fly to Dubai and then catch an aircraft from there to New York, or I'd fly directly to New York from, wherever I am in India. right? So why would they want to compete with each other? They can complement each other.
But tell me, does that work better if there's a partnership of equals? If there's a very small airline there, won't they benefit more from the bigger airline database?
Yes
than the vice
and no.
versa?
Yes and no. It depends on the arrangements, right? So I think a lot of it depends on the negotiation and how people are thinking about it, right? So yes, they'll benefit from the bigger airline database, sure. But guess what? The bigger airline's got 10 slots for that particular flight on that particular day, and you've only got the one. Most likely, they've got the more preferable time slots. You probably got... So it's win and lose, right?
Okay.
I mean, so that's the fifth thing which you get, the ability to do partnerships which make sense.
Yeah.
This is sixth. And I didn't recognize the sixth until recently. So if you read articles I've written in the past, you'll find the sixth doesn't exist. I recognized the sixth after starting this company, when I realized that there's a huge hole in loyalty competence.
Yep.
And the ability to use data-driven marketing effectively, which gets taught to you by an effective loyalty program, the ability to leverage a currency and move away from discounts to using a currency which is more valuable than the dollar, but costs substantially less, right? That competence, I think, is also a huge asset which a loyalty program gives you. So now you take these six assets, there are more, but these six are the key ones, right? And you put them together in some kind of combination in order to drive a result. Now that result is to create some kind of change in behavior and attitude, emotion in your customer, right? If I can make you care, I've got you, right? Now, if I can make you care about which bank you bank with, beyond the fact that it just happens to be on the corner from where you live, I've got you, right? So these six levers, if you will, these six assets, and your management of them is what gives you loyalty, right? Now, I'd argue with you, what is loyalty? Right now, we think of loyalty being like a dog, and it's ever loyal to you, and you die and comes and lies in your grave and cries, and that's not how loyalty programs work. That's not how businesses work. Let's be real, right? You do for me, I do for you. It's a contract, right? You'll try and put some kind of emotional wrapping, but fundamentally, it's a you scratch my back and I scratch yours kind of contract, right? Between us. So what you have is you've got some bundle of functional benefits, and you wrap them in some kind of added value, right? And you try and deliver that more effectively from using loyalty program assets in order to drive your business forward, right? And that causes loyalty. Now, the ultimate loyalty, I'd argue with you, is unthinking. Chances are, unless, and you and I have been around for many, many years, so unless there's a moment of abruption, which means the dentist told you you're going to change your toothpaste, or your wife tells you your breath stinks, or something like that, without a moment of abruption, the chances are you use the same toothpaste given to you by your mother when you're a child, right? Just because it's unthinking loyalty, and I'd argue that a habit is far preferable. So what I really want you to do, if I'm a credit card company, is to pull out my card as the front of wallet card by habit, without thinking. So I get you to do it once, twice, 10 times, and then boom, you're just doing it. You're not thinking anymore, right? And that, I could argue, is loyalty. And you say, well, are you emotionally engaged? And I'm looking at it from the business perspective. Yes, I'd love you to be emotionally engaged. But frankly, as long as you're pulling me out all the time, that's what I really, really care about, right? So as we think through what we mean by loyalty, Shobha, I'm saying there's a loyalty program, which is a very, a set of tools, if you will, and it's very purposive. And there's loyalty as a concept. And by putting the two together, you get a little confused about, loyalty programs, loyalty.
It's a good construct you created there. But Ajay, you said something very interesting about unthinking loyalty, and I was just thinking about it, about how we grew up as children with this toothpaste or brand of whatever, milk or whatever, cornflakes, etc., especially if you live in the same country. If you move countries, brands change. My question is it not true that the newer generations, the millennials and Gen Zs, are far more promiscuous with their brand choices than we were when we grew up? Is that not a fact that people change brands much more often today than we did, let's say 10, 20, 30, 40 years back?
So the answer is yes and no, right? I'll explain. Because there's a plethora of choice, this is my, two-bit on this, and I'm no expert, right? But I suspect because there's a plethora of choice, the temptation is to be promiscuous, right? For us, we had no choices. When we were growing up in India, right? if you got one brand, consider yourself lucky. If you got three, oh boy,
Yeah.
right? You're dancing in the streets, right? That's about all you got. Whereas nowadays, there are 30 brands, 50 brands on almost any category. You go walk down a supermarket aisle here in Dubai.
It's confusing.
Let alone in the US. So what happens? So this is where I think we need to understand the way human beings think, right? I think, sure, what tends to happen is we tend to simplify things we don't want to think about, right? Once I brought a brand and it works for me, or I bought a concept around a brand and it works for me, that's what I carry on doing, right? I don't think about it anymore.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And automatic unthinking loyalty is really good for me because it means I don't have to think about it.
And it's good for the brand as well. I mean,
and
that's
it's
what
good
you
for the
want.
brand. Absolutely.
Correct.
So now when I'm going down the supermarket aisle and there, 100 feet of different types of chips, and one has salt and one has less salt and one has more salt and one has something else and one has something else, blah, 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 blah. I don't need to think. I just grab the one in the green packet which looks like Pringles and boom, I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need to think anymore. So processing time becomes something which is important. Now, millennials, as one of your previous guests said, have the attention span of a goldfish.
Yeah.
Right? Which is true for us as well nowadays, incidentally, right? I mean, we have an attention span of about 7 seconds.
Yeah.
In our time, I don't know if you remember, commercials used to be made of 30 seconds with 10-second edits.
Yeah.
Because that, I suspect, was the attention time of the average CFO or the average CEO, because they wouldn't,
Yeah.
and then, everything became rather, sorry, that was a joke, but you understand where I'm coming from,
Yeah,
right?
I know.
So, 7 seconds. So the less time it takes me, says the millennial, the happier I am. Now think about things which they're loyal to. Brands they're loyal to. Bands. Types of music.
Yeah.
Games. Types of games. Right? I can go on. We can spend the rest of the afternoon just giving you category after category in which loyalty is there. So yes, they're promiscuous, but, who knows? I'm no expert on the subject. It's just my impression.
No, my question therefore was, are you seeing lesser take-up of loyalty programs with the younger generation than you had with the older generation? Is there any data to prove what is
So
proved?
I meet with people all the time who tell me that, in my market, put any country you want over there or any city you want or any district you want, the only thing that works is discounts. I'll give you this. Shivu, is there anybody alive who doesn't want a discount? Right?
Yeah.
It's universally true. It's a human
it's
thing,
human
right?
nature.
Now, any body, even with the attention span of a goldfish, can offer a discount.
Yeah.
Where it gets interesting is what you do in your marketing to get full price. Because you believe that your brand is worth that amount. And there are plenty of brands who never discount. Right?
Yeah.
And they have perfectly good business models. And why wouldn't you apply the quality thinking which results in that? And I think the answer is, Shivu, the first port in a storm of competition is a discount. Right? It's a lazy marketer's way of solving. I know, if you want to chop that piece out,
No,
totally
it's absolutely fine.
understand,
Very
because-
true, very true. I agree with that.
And I think a lot of CEOs and CFOs accept that as the cost of doing business. And of course, it makes them question the marketing guy because he's the prime one saying, I've got to run some advertising, I need a discount. And they say, come on. But, it's just, okay, let's get on with it. We need the sales, right? We need to hit this quarter's numbers.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of people accept it and becomes a part of the ethos. So as a result of that, customers expect it because
Correct.
we've educated them to expect it. Right? And therefore, we've told them, look for the discount. So now what are you buying? Which brand are you buying? You're not buying the brand, you're buying the discount. So depending on which brand is most discounted at this particular point, because I've educated you to look for that, that's the one you buy. Now you think about a brand like Apple, right? You're buying it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, if you think of a brand, okay, I'm not going to name a brand, but there are enough brands which you can think of where you only buy on a discount.
Yeah. True. Very true.
So now ask yourself, what's the difference?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Now, somebody who's responsible has said, no, I'm going to create a brand which is so great, I don't need to give a discount. Somebody else has allowed some of the strongest brands in the world to get eroded by promoting them up the wazoo to the point where you demote the brand.
There's stores here, if you go walk around Dubai, some of the Dubai malls, some of the malls in Dubai, there are brands which are on permanent discount of 70%.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Like the shop window is like permanently painted 70% off, walk in.
There you go.
I find that extremely strange. and obviously takes the customer for granted. The customer believes that the price was 100 one day and now it's selling for 30. Why would that be? Why would you not change your price to 30 anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I find that quite surprising.
Well, it tells you a lot about the person who buys that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So either they see value at the 30 or they genuinely believe in the 70. You know that Nigerian scam?
Yeah. Which
right?
one?
It's still doing the round. The one about, my so-and-so was the minister of Nigeria and he's left me $100 million and interest from me.
Correct.
And do you know why it still works? Do you know why it's still done?
Why?
So it's 99.9% of humanity has figured out it's a scam and they did it without thinking about it. The 0.01% or 0.001% or whatever the hell the number is who actually respond, right, have self-selected themselves to say, hey, I put my hand up and I wasn't aware of this, I'm an idiot.
Very true.
Right?
Very true.
So very often you do this kind of thing, so people self-select themselves into something which you want to have happen.
Correct.
Right?
Understood.
So there's an entire thing called social engineering.
Of course. Which as a banker,
of course,
so much of this
Yeah.
with gullible customers, of course. Absolutely. So Ajay, I read that, to your point about loyalty programs, 90% of consumers today are members of some loyalty program or the other, right? At least one, and on average have 10 to 20 programs. I mean, if I open my phone, I'll show you how many programs I'm a member of, right? Retailers, supermarkets, airlines, hotels, everything, right? It is getting more confusing for consumers to remember which programs are you on, which ones you are not on. And more than half of the memberships, I believe, globally are inactive, right? And most earn program rewards, which are meaningless. It's so small that they don't really mean much to the consumer. How should you think organizations and companies should address this?
So you remember we spoke about making people care?
Yeah.
Right? Now, if I can make you care about something, you'll care. And if I don't make you care, you'll reward me by not caring.
Correct.
Right? Now, if I make it a bit of an effort for you to become a member of a program which you value, you'll remember it. Right? Now, if I just sign you into the program because you happen to give your mobile number while shopping in a store, and I made you a member of that program, and you don't really care, you don't care.
Correct.
Right? Now, can I make you care? Have I got a program in place to make you care? There's some chance it might work. Most don't. So when we do a good loyalty program, Shivu, the way we think about it is the first is we create some kind of barrier to entry. So you jump a hoop, maybe two, in order to become a member. So you care enough to jump that hoop or two. And that hoop or two can be as simple as make a little bit of effort in filling in a membership form rather than just giving you a mobile number, right? Okay. Then, or it could be more complicated. You do 5 flights and they'll make you a member. There are all kinds of permissions. But just that you put up a hand and say, look, I care. Now that you've done that, then we put you through a welcome experience, which you remember. Now, how many of the program welcome experiences that you've gone through do you remember? Now, they've got this thing called unboxing videos. I don't know if you've seen them.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
Which is when, somebody gets a swank product and they unboxes it and he takes a YouTube video and everybody goes rah rah.
Yeah.
Now, think about the loyalty program unboxing experience, right? You become a member of the program. It does make you feel good. Or do you not even notice? Right. That's the welcome to the program. After that, if you think about learning, and you think about how curriculum learning works, think about your own life.
Yeah.
You start off in the kindergarten, you then go to lower school, middle school, high school, and then you get higher learning, right? We tend to do, call it a 3-month to 6-month kindergarten, early kind of program to make sure you understand the benefits of what you've gotten into. Most people don't do that. They expect you to do the math and figure it out yourself. Right? So you don't do the math because you don't care enough. Right? So you don't know. So the company is bleeding, right? The bank is bleeding in, to take an example closer to your heart, and you don't even notice because you don't care. Right? Now, if they try and take it away from you, you retaliate by getting very upset and say, hang on a sec, I thought you said you didn't care. People don't want to lose stuff. They don't really care about gaining it in many instances, right? So what you've got onto is you've got a very dangerous situation. You've launched a loyalty program and don't know what you're doing. Because you've got people who will punish you if you try and take it away, and it's darned expensive to have a loyalty program. But they don't value it and what you've given them. So if you don't get your act together, you don't do the welcome to the program, the nursery period, getting you into a place where, you have an 88% open rate on your mails.
Yeah.
I mean, you come from a bank.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the open rates here are, but in India, when I used to work with banks, credit card open rates are 60%. Credit card statement open rates.
Statements, of course.
Statement open rates.
Yeah.
Which you'd expect to be 100%.
100%, yeah.
And your email open rates are less than 1%. Right?
Here's it's
for your marketing email.
I believe low single digit is what the number is here.
Same, so 1 or 2%, 3%, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So what you're finding is that people are just not paying attention to you anymore, right? And that is something which your marketing person should be responsible for to the CEO of the bank, because as you said, you're ruining the investment I made in my brand.
Correct.
You're ruining the investment I made in my customer relationship, and you're getting rid of one of my most powerful assets, which is the ability to talk to my customer one-to-one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And no, honestly, I'll talk about email, just to kind of deep dive in there. Most email programs today, whatever program you're on, whether it's Outlook or Google, Gmail, have filters which take away most of the junk email that are coming in, like spam mails. So if you go to the spam folder, which I'm sure you do once in a while, there are so many marketing emails there from different brands, right, that come through. It's a waste of money and time for the marketer, no? If your spam filters across different email providers are anyway going to block you, why bother to send it? Is that the off chance that goes through and you'll see it and you'll open it and you'll buy my product? Is that what I'm hoping as a marketer?
So you're preaching to the choir right now, right? So I'm completely with you. If you want to put a tick mark, a previous guest of yours spoke about the last surviving P of marketing is promotion.
Correct.
Right? So now if I want to justify my existence, I go and tell this, the CEO, who's my boss, that, I did 55 different emails last month. Now, the fact that all of them wound up in a spam, well, that's the way the world is. Right? So so I've got a young, well, he's not young anymore, but he was young when he worked for us back in the day, when I used to run a data-driven marketing agency, and he used to be a part of our team.
A colleague, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and now he has his own agency, and he works with some of the world's most respected names, which are, singers and actresses who set up these beauty brands, right? And they outsource their marketing to India. And he's the one who does it for 25 of them, people like Beyonce and people like that.
Correct.
Right, and huge names. So I met with one of his colleagues who told me, and remember I've been in data-driven marketing for a few years, right? And at that time it must have been well over 30.
Yeah.
And she told me that, when we start our campaigns, because it comes from this brand name, it starts at 40% and then very rapidly falls to 4%. And then, it drops to about, 0.5% and that's where it stabilizes. And I said, I beg your pardon? I mean, shouldn't go up from 40%? She said, no, you don't understand email marketing. That's not the way it works. And I said, would you give me a moment to try and explain to you how you could get it done? She said, no, you don't understand. You're very old. You don't get it. That's not the way it works. And that, Suvo, I think, gave me a great deal of insight into how it works. Because what you're doing is you're taking a very powerful brand name. I mean, some of the world's biggest names, right?
Yeah.
These actresses and, and they're talking to young women who are the biggest fans. And you have it drop down to 1% in the space of 6 months. Shame on you. What you've done is you've converted what would be a powerful channel into spam. Correct. And the reason why all those messages wind up in spam is because you choose not to recognize that they're important to you. If they were important to you, you'd click on that email and you'd say, add it to my database, and so I get it into my inbox.
Yeah.
You don't want it there.
But Ajay, then the marketer of today has a big problem on hand, no? If nobody reads newspapers anymore, the younger generation, they don't watch TV either, right? They're watching streaming services. Emails they don't open. How the hell does a marketer market a product, right? Okay, you could go back to digital advertising and targeted stuff. But even those, you're just waiting for the first ad to play and finish. And you click saying skip ad and move on, right?
Yeah.
So how is a marketer supposed to market a product anymore?
So I think that's what it boils down to, right? A little bit of imagination, a little bit of integrity, right? I think what marketing has done consistently over the 40 years that I've been, and you're a marketer yourself, Shivu, and you know this, and you'll be able to vouch. I think we start off with the 4 Ps, right? Product, place, promotion and price, right?
Yep.
Because of the, I don't know, for whatever reason, but I'm going to suggest it's a combination of ignorance and arrogance, right, of the average marketeer.
Yeah.
They got it whittled. Price is decided by somebody else. Place is decided by somebody else,
Yeah.
right? I mean, all you're left with is promotion. And now very soon, promotion is going to be decided by somebody else because you're not being competent about how you use it. You're not being responsible. So the young lady I was telling you about who tells me, the way it's to expect that your database will go down to a 0.25% open rate, well, shame on you. Because you haven't thought, how do I get it up to 88%? Now, don't tell me it's not possible because I've done it. I've done it not once, but repeatedly, year after year after year, brand after brand after brand. So it is possible. You just need to think it through. Now, there are many tools available to you, Shivo, which were not available previously, right? Yeah. Previously, we didn't have the advantage of the databases the way we now have them. We didn't have the advantage of the AI and ML and all the cool stuff it can do.
Correct.
We didn't have the advantages of sonic branding, of, aroma branding, and all these, the senses of branding, which we didn't have, right? I mean, well, okay, Starbucks, for example, I designed a program for them way back in the day, which they piloted in 6 or 7 stores in the Bay Area, and then they closed it down. And the reason why was because a part of the Starbucks experience, in the minds of the guys whom I was dealing with, was standing in the queue and the aroma of coffee. So they had a sense of it back then. I'm talking about 20, 25 years ago, maybe 25, 30 years ago, 25 years ago, something like that, right? Starbucks was still a baby company then, right? Amazon was barely heard of. I mean, that gives you a sense of how old we are, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so they knew back then that the brand experience went beyond a logo, right? Went beyond some advertising to that sensation of the queue while you're progressing in your mind, how am I thinking about this coffee? Am I going to have the usual? I'm going to treat myself to something else. And, all that's going on in your mind while you're standing in the queue. And that's part of the brand experience. And, at least you had people who are thinking, right, and understood where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Now, if you think about brands now, and you could argue, well, a lot of brands don't have that opportunity, right? But maybe they do if they just use their imaginations. So I think, marketers today have to redefine how they're thinking about their jobs. And Shiva, as we were talking about earlier, my friend Ramesh Thomas has got a very interesting, he's a brand specialist. A very interesting construct on how value is built these days. And he calls it the restaurant model. 3 R's of the restaurant model.
3 R's.
The 3 R's.
Okay.
And the first R is the physicality of the restaurant itself.
Yeah.
Where it's located, the chairs and tables, whether it's air conditioned, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Right?
The hardware, let's say.
The hardware.
Yeah.
The second R is, to your point, the software, which is a recipe.
Yeah.
How the food is served, how it's made, the entire experience of the restaurant.
Yeah.
And the third R is the reputation. And in his thinking, the reputation is enhanced or diminished as a result of the other 2 R's. So if you go to McDonald's, for example, and somebody comes to you wearing a suit and a tie and he offers you a
white glove service,
and then he offers you, a lightly broiled piece of beef in between 2 beautifully, cut it, just give me the QP, right? That's what I want. And throw in the fries while you're about it, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to think about it, you just want to get it, right? On the other hand, if you did the same thing as we were talking about earlier in the French restaurant, and somebody says, go and stand in a queue, and then, just call out what you want, and, it'll be in your hands in a few seconds later. That's not what you went there for, right? So there's a bit of a moment of abruption in the brand if these 3 don't line up together.
Interesting you mentioned that. I was reading an article recently in The Economist about Michelin star restaurants, where the R of reputation as well as recipe, the software comes in a big way, right? And the study shows that Michelin star restaurants, after they get this Michelin star, have a far higher mortality rate than non-Michelin star restaurants.
Yeah.
Bizarre, isn't it? You'd expect the star to actually create longevity. But apparently the expectations of customers go up so much.
That's right.
That they can't keep up with it. And many of them shut down within 7 years.
So there's a curve, the expectation versus delivery curve, right? And think of a jagged curve which each experience either brings down the expectation or takes up the expectation, right?
Yeah.
Now, I had a boss who wanted me to dazzle and delight every single customer in every single experience.
Okay. I like that word, dazzle and delight.
Dazzle and delight, right? Now, to my mind, love the guy, he's a great guy. It's an incredibly stupid brief. Because if I dazzle and delight you the first time, I dazzle and delight you the second time, what's your expectation? Your expectation has gone to a point where I can't
meet it anymore.
I can't meet it.
Yeah.
Right? The Michelin star I expect to be dazzled and delighted when I show up in that restaurant. Right? You're going to charge me that way. I really want it to be exceptional. And it's merely very good. No, it's not very good. It's very, very good. But it's not exceptional.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm done. I hate
You
you.
raise the bar for yourself.
Exactly.
And you can't meet it anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
What do you do?
that's
Don't raise
foolish.
the bar at all, is what you're saying?
No. I think you need to manage it very carefully, which is you set the expectations. So what I finally managed to persuade the boss to consider was you set the expectations in a manner in which it's consistent. And then once in a while you do a dazzle and delight. Say, oh, wow. So this was for the Taj group of hotels, which as you know is a chain in India.
My favorite
here
group,
in Dubai is
my favorite hotel group.
My favorite hotel group. There you go. So what we created at Suvo was these things called Taj moments. Right, and we actually for many years, I mean now it's called Tajness, but for many years, Tajness.
Interesting.
For many years, what we try and do is create a moment which would cause you to say, that's why I stay in the Taj. Right now, the antecedents of this was a guy called Jan Carlson. Have you read Moments of Truth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seminal book, absolutely.
Absolutely seminal. And he said there are only these number of moments when you're on airline journey, and those moments are which make or break your brand, right? And whether you'll fly by this airline ever again or you'll never fly.
Correct.
Now, that same thinking, a Taj moment is one of those 7 moments when you're in your hotel stay, 24 hours in a day, let's say 23 hours and 55 minutes don't matter. It's neither here nor there. The 7 moments, which are just a few seconds each, are what make up your mind, right? And if I can manage those effectively, you walk away with a positive impression. And I keep bolstering that. And so there are 2 ways in which I make you say, that's why I like the Taj. Because they do this consistently. And they just keep doing this. Or that once in a while when they do something so exceptional, you say, wow, only the Taj could do that.
I read a recent McKinsey report which talked about the fact that what is called subscription-based loyalty programs, where you pay money to be in the program, or there are freemium models that unlock additional access for a small fee. The members of a paid loyalty program apparently are 60% more likely to spend more on the brand compared to 30% for free loyalty clubs, almost double. Along with a higher purchase value, a higher purchase frequency. So do you think loyalty programs are better off charging for membership?
Okay, so many years ago, this was back in 88, 89, I designed what, at least to the best of my knowledge, was one of the first subscription programs in the hospitality industry, which is what we call a member dines free program.
Yeah.
Which is you buy this program, and then, if you're a table of 2, you pay 50%, table of 3, 33%, etc. Member dines free. Right? Of course, you eat alone, you get 50% off the bill, but that's, you're still paying something. So, I thought it was very clever.
Very clever, yeah.
Right? And I was very proud of myself. They launched it after I left, but, because I designed it, I used to dine out on that, and another story which I'll tell you in a minute. Right? So, fast forward several years, I joined the Taj about 25 years later, 25, 30 years later, whatever it was, right? And the Taj had a completely different kind of program, which is designed by this friend of mine, which is a points-driven program, a subscription program, it's points-driven. And, I can give myself no credit for designing the origins of that program, though I can take full credit for what happened to it subsequently, because I designed the subsequent versions and the success of the program, the monetary success and the customer success of the program, I think I can take a little bit of credit for. But the original design was this buddy of mine. Now, I'll tell you why I tell you the story.
Yeah.
Now, the member dines free programs, the way I designed it, basically Suvo buys a card for, let's say, 1,000 dirhams.
Yep.
Right? And he figures that, if he spends 3,000 dirhams in this hotel at the restaurants, he comes out on top. So 3,000 above and he comes out on top, 3,000 below, he's out of pocket. Average table size, 3.3 people per table and blah, 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 right? Sure does the mental math. End of the year, I call him and say, hey, would you like to renew? Now, there are 2 situations. Suvo more than 3,000 dirhams, and he spent less than 3,000. He spent less than 3,000, he says no. He spent more than 3,000, he says yes. So what's happened? Self-selection has resulted in greater spends. That had nothing to do with the program. You were spending more anyway. It didn't cause you to spend more.
Yeah.
That was happening. You follow what I'm trying to get at? So you can do a subscription program which happens by self-selection. Now, the program which I joined at the Taj didn't work that way, right? Because they did a point program and had to, let's not get into the economics of it and how that worked. That's a very interesting story in itself. But just suffice to say that you had renewal rates which are as high as 88%, 89%, year after year after year, right? Which means that it wasn't the 45% renewal rate of the program that I had originally designed.
Yeah.
And the 45% had renewed were basically doing so at a loss to the hotel company, right? So now when we think about you get more, average amount per bill and greater number of bills, were you getting that in the first place? Or was it a result of the program design? Now recently, we did a 25 years after first doing the First Citizen Club, as we then called it, and now it's called the First Citizens, for Shoppers Stop, which is a big department store in India. Right.
You designed
we redesigned it.
You designed that originally.
Yeah, the original, So, and thereby hangs a tail. 25 years ago we did the original version, and now 25 years later came back and did the new version. And in the new version, what we did was we did a thing called Shoppers Shop Black. And Black basically charged you 6,500 rupees, which is quite a lot of money in India, certainly for the average Shoppers Stop shopper. It's per annum. And the result of that is a 1.6% increase in spends per year. So you get a 60% increase in spends per year. Now we're talking real money.
Because you're, I guess, vested in the program now, you make sure you come back to Shoppers Stop, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now what's happening is you're centralizing your spend, and the disproportionate value and the profitability of the program, it's incredible. Now, I don't have the inside dope on exactly what the profitability is, or rather, let me rephrase it. I used to have the inside dope, but it's confidential, and I don't know what it is now. But suffice to say that based on numbers we saw, it was incredibly profitable.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is subscription programs, yes, they can work a breeze if you know what you're doing, or it could just be, you're going out of pocket in order to pay. So people are paying you for the discount, they're getting the discount, and if it's not an adequate discount, they don't renew, and if it is adequate discount, they hang on, which means that you're discounting more. So why did you do it in the first place?
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so this is a good time now to take a short commercial break for a message from my sponsors. As you know, our sponsors fund not just this podcast, but also the gift cards that are available through give.moneymajlis.com, where you can redeem $50 cards for one of the 6 pre-selected charities from across the world. And of course, our guest today, Ajay Row, will also get a $1,000 gift card that he can choose to give to a charity from that list.
The financial world is changing fast. Institutions need to meet the growing client demand for crypto financial services, but they need a battle-tested platform to build upon.
AquaNow is a leading crypto financial services platform, powering incumbent institutions to launch crypto brokerage, payments, and remittance services for their clients, securely and at scale.
Be part of the transformation. Visit aquanow.com today.
The end touches your life
in more ways than you can imagine.
You want more tech,
more speed,
more convenience,
more entertainment,
more business solutions.
E&, gives you all that
and so much more. E&, go for more.
Parents teach their children to talk, to walk, to ride, to read. So why not teach them about managing their money? Introducing the all-new Live Light app, designed to teach 8 to 18-year-olds good money habits. A free and totally secure app designed for them that's always under your control. Top up their cards, set limits, assign tasks, and reward them with allowances. Download the LiveX app to open a Live Light account in minutes, and the first 50 dirham allowance is on us. Visit live.me today. Live Digital Bank by Emirates NBD. Trust and innovation combined. T's and C's apply.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Intellect Design Arena. Intellect drives digital adoption in banking and insurance. Leverage emac.ai, the most comprehensive, composable, and intelligent open finance platform for banking and insurance transformation. Intellect Design Arena.
And
Touches your life in more ways than you can imagine.
you want more tech,
More speed.
more convenience,
More entertainment.
more business solutions,
And gives you all that.
and so much more. And go for more.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the Middle East and Africa's digital payments champion. We make business happen and economies prosper by simplifying commerce and payments. Trusted by over 250 banks, fintechs and telcos, and 130,000 merchants in over 50 countries. Bringing you tomorrow's payment solutions today.
Ajay, since we're on Money Majlis, I have to move to banking at some stage. So let's move to banking reward programs now. In the banking space, say for a few programs like Bankcamp Preferred Rewards or locally ADCB's Touchpoints program, most reward programs are centered on the cards business. I would imagine the reason for this is the card business is more profitable and more competitive, and cards are more transaction usage, and there are many more marketing programs that go along with cards. Do you see this changing to more pan-bank programs in the future? Do you think that banks will benefit by having something that is more holistic and not just centered on cards? I know you work with a few banks in India as customer capital. What is your experience in this?
So, okay, great question. Let me take that step by step and break it down, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to answer the first question the last question first, and then get to the first question last of why it started with cards, right? Let's start with So I believe banks are leaving a lot of money on the table, right? By not having effective loyalty programs and leveraging ecosystems effectively, right? Let me explain. A bank has everything it needs on the customer to be able to cross-sell. Now, the silos that you spoke about earlier in banks are extreme.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it was about 25 years ago, when I was with Wonderman, this would have been sometime in the late 90s, I think Citigroup was formed. Travelers Group and Citibank came together, right?
Correct.
And Sandy Whale, who was a boss of my then, who was a buddy of my then boss, Barbara Jack, decided that they wanted to do a loyalty program which would work across Citigroup. And so a bunch of people from Wonderman, including myself, went off to New York to do a design of that program, which is to be called Citi Futures. And Citi Futures was brilliant. It taught me so much about how pan banks should work and how the economics work, and how to structure it to make it work.
Yeah.
What it didn't teach me was why it fails. And the very first presentation that we did of Citi Futures, when we started the presentation, there was a room full of about 25 people, and within the first slide, we're down to one, which is the program sponsor.
Why is that?
Basically because of the silos in the bank. They couldn't stand each other. And the very first slide said we'll all work together. And the guy who runs liabilities dislikes the guy who runs assets. And the guy who runs assets hates the guy who runs cards. The guy who runs cards hates the guy from marketing. He thinks all he does is hang out with the women from the agency. And the guy who runs marketing hates the finance guy. Oh, sorry, they all hate the finance guy. And nobody likes the CEO anyway. So, they don't want to work together. They're all running the business and they're all looking for the next, they don't want to be the next job.
Familiar story, yeah.
I think it's pretty universal across banks. So whenever I've done a successful bank program, right, we've always started by saying, you need to start by breaking down the silos. The math, I'll tell you. And I understand the math of banks reasonably well, how money gets made, where money gets spent, and how to reward and how to build loyalty, all that stuff we get.
Yeah.
The silos are what we've got to solve for.
Correct.
And how do we get them all to work together? Otherwise, you wind up with a shadow of what it could be, right? And let me talk to you about bank programs and the economics.
Yeah.
See, why do you give points? Now, either because you make more money, and I advisedly say make more money, right? There's some points which you give to keep making money, but making more money should get you more points.
Yep.
Or you save money. So I take a part of the saving and give it back to my customer as points. Or you improve the probability of the guy staying long term, right?
Yeah.
So make money, save money, improve the probability of profitable stickiness, right? Those are three reasons you give points.
Yep.
Right. Now, if you take it across each business of the bank and you think about each business, how does this play out? For the cards business, how it plays out.
Yeah.
How it plays out for the liabilities business. I'm talking about retail banks here. I'm not talking about
Yeah.
the business side of the bank, right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about the retail bank, which is, of course, your field of expertise.
Yeah.
And you take that for the assets business, etc. Now, each one of them has got money you can save. What do you save most on? One of the biggest costs for the bank, if you take out the cost of money, is CAC, the cost of customer acquisition, right? And that gets paid in many ways. It gets paid in the rental, it gets paid in actual marketing dollars, it gets paid in sales dollars, etc., etc.
Yeah.
I mean, you know this better than I do, right?
Yeah.
The second very large cost is the cost of rewards, right? So if you can do something about both of them by your loyalty program design, I think you're in a good place, right, on the saving cost side. The next thing that you spend is you make a lot of money every time a transaction happens, right?
Yeah.
On some MCCs, you make more money. On some particular MIDs, you make far more money, right? If I can target spends towards those merchant category codes or those merchant IDs, right, which allow you to make more money, you know, that's very profitable to the bank. And so therefore, it's worth paying a little bit more to get that. If you look at your assets, the EMIs which get paid, the first EMI and the last EMI have a totally different profitability quotient for the bank. The last 3 or 4 typically are all, I'm talking on mortgage here, they're all profit.
Correct.
Right? The first few are mainly loan repayment. So it's disproportionately valuable for the bank to keep you till the end. Right? So as you start thinking about each business of the bank, right?
Yeah.
If you take your average daily balance in a current account, it's probably the most profitable thing for the bank going.
It is.
Because you pay 0 interest rate.
Yep.
You give it to your treasury at whatever, 4 or 5%, depending on which part of the world you're in. Treasury gives it to the credit card business at 12%, and you know, the bank is making obscene amounts of money because while it's going through treasury, it's all going to the bank, right?
Yeah.
And the credit card, of course, gives it out at, you know, as high as 30%, 24%, depending on which country you're in.
45% here.
45% over here. Well, there you go. Wow. So that gives you a sense of how valuable it is to the bank to get that account filled.
Yeah.
So your average daily balance is disproportionately valuable. Now, if you go to the liability business and you say, will you fund that? Liability business says, no, I only make, you know, whatever, 4% or 6% or whatever I give to the treasury ad. How can I fund this? Right? There's only so much I can fund. And very often regulations, you know, don't allow them to fund it. So you need to use your head and say, okay, how do I do this? Because that converts into money for the credit card business and for the treasury. Right? So as we think through each part of the bank and you think through how the economics work, you can create pan banks which stand the test of common sense, right? So I think it's inevitable. Now, banks know a lot about you and they've got a huge amount of trust. I mean, I trust my bank with my money.
Yep.
There can't be many more. I mean, the only person you trust more perhaps is your spouse and your kids. But aside from that, the most trusted institution.
That is one, too, like you said, nobody else knows more about you than your bank.
Absolutely.
They know every movement, every time you spend money.
Yeah, they know everything.
At a flower shop to a funeral parlor, they know exactly,
Absolutely. So what you want to do is you want to leverage the two in order to touch the life in many, many more ways. So as you think through the pan banks and the ability to create ecosystems, we're talking about airline ecosystems, right?
Yeah.
The banks need to change the game. They need to create a currency other than the dollar or the AED or the rupee, right? Create their own currency, which they control the value of, give disproportionate value, and do this on other people's money.
So do you believe that value should be in other banking products, like a discount on a loan or a higher rate of interest in a deposit? Or should it be something non-banking? Should it be, you know, electronics, hotel stays, travel, etc.? What do you think works better?
So to my mind, it's where you can give disproportionate value to your customer without killing yourself. Now, the base business of banking is the interest rate, right? You don't want to touch that, to my mind.
Yeah.
Right. What I want to do is I want to get somebody else who wants to talk to the bank's customers and is willing to pay for it. Because this is money that are given to Facebook and Google.
Yeah.
They may as well give it to the bank.
Yeah.
And guess what? The bank is much nicer about this. This is money that are given to Amazon. I'd rather they give it to the bank. Right? And if the bank can be more decent in those relationships and be more supportive of their partners, whether it's a consumer durable partner, a mobile phone partner, or education, or whatever it is, whichever the partnership is, I think the bank's in a very good place to create a set of trusted products, vouched for, if you will, by the bank. Not guaranteed by the bank, vouched for by the bank and the customers of the bank. Right? The bank's in a very good place to create an ecosystem, and that ecosystem could be disproportionately valuable to the bank. So I believe that, you know, it will morph beyond the credit cards.
Have you seen this, Ajay, working somewhere very well?
Well, I mean, we're building a business around it, so I'd like to believe that at least with our clients, such as we have implemented, we're only a 2-year-old business, as you know.
Yeah.
But with the, call it the 4 or 5 banks, and we started implementations, I think so far, touch wood, it seems to be doing pretty well, right? To your last question, right? Sorry, I don't want to make this into a sales call for our company. Happy to do that to anybody who's listening. You know how to catch a Shiva and therefore me. But
go ahead with the example for sure. Yeah.
So let me stick with credit cards and answer that part of your question. Right? Yeah. I think it started with credit cards for 2 or 3 reasons. One was the credit card has got a velocity which other products of the bank don't have.
Correct.
Right. For many products of the bank, it's fill it, forget it. Right. I mean, take it, forget it, like a loan. Right. You take it and then you just keep paying back every month, but you don't really keep. Credit card, you've got a choice to pull it out every single time you pull it out.
Correct.
Right? And because it's in your wallet all the time, it's also the most visible face of the bank.
Yeah.
Right? Aside from the fact that you have branch banking and advertising, but this is really the most visible part of the bank in my wallet.
It's in your wallet, yeah.
Right. And I pull it out. And if it's a front of wallet card, I pull it out frequently, right? So disproportionate value in the credit card business. Also, because credit card is linked to spend, right? You can link a transaction value very easily to a point system.
Correct.
I've also got a theory, and Shiva, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The credit card guys tend to be the cowboys of the banking industry, right? If you take the corporate finance guys, they tend to be very conservative, or at least back in the day.
Yeah.
The credit card guys were the marketing guys. They were the let's get it done kind of guys. So loyalty programs found a natural home with that kind of person. I may be wrong, and this is really, you would know whether I'm...
No, it's very true, Ajay. I think also the fact that credit cards have the highest margins among all banking products. The ability to fund a loyalty program is far higher with the credit card people. And don't forget, credit card also has, funding available from their franchise partners, people like Visa or MasterCard or Discover. So, it's a double whammy, positive double whammy, where A, you make good margins from the bank, from the customers itself, from the cardholders. B, you get funded by MasterCard, Visa, etc. So you have a lot of budget at your disposal. So credit card guys are not just the cowboys, also richest cowboys in the banking
well, there you
business,
go,
right? So therefore, the loyalty programs start there, but unfortunately often end there. And the point you're making is, can we extend this to other products? So I've been a consumer banker for 37 years, and one thing that, well, I must tell you, I've tried multiple times, over my career in different banks, but I've really failed to create a bank-wide loyalty program that really works. But if you're saying that you're seeing this happening elsewhere, then that's good.
Well, we did one about 10 years ago for a bank in India, which became pretty much a global study. So I used to trot around the world, and colleagues of mine used to trot around the world, speaking at various banking conferences on how it worked. And, as I said, we understood the math way back when I worked on the Citibank thingy, right? But the math was a small part of it. That said, most banks don't understand the math, right? A lot of banks, they understand the math of banking. They don't understand how the overlay of loyalty in banking can provide disproportionate value.
So going back to the example you had of Citibank, you said the reason it failed was the silos. Is that the reason it failed?
Yeah.
Not the economics of it.
No,
silos.
The economics worked. But you see, for the economics to work, let me put it to you this way. If I tell the credit card guy you need to fund the savings account, right, which is at 0% interest, because you're going to get the benefit eventually, because you're going to make 45% interest, of which you pay 6% or 7% of the treasury, but all the rest is yours. And oh, by the way, you get MasterCard to help you or Visa to help you, which is kind of cool, right? All of that is possible because of the savings guy, right? So you got to help him. You've been a banker long enough to say how that would play out, right? It's a little unlikely to happen. I mean, the CEO could force it down the throat, but, you're forcing it down the throat. It's not going to work well. So unless you can line up everybody to be supportive of this and get them to see the value for the individual businesses, and the CEO to see the value to the bank overall, I think you're not in a great place, right? So that, I think, is what we need to try and establish. And once you've established that, Shiva, I think it makes it a lot easier. The other thing which makes it easier, you spoke about it briefly, which is funding. Banks are used to funding other people's businesses. They're not used to getting their businesses funded. So when a Master and Visa or any of the franchise partners comes by and says, look, we'll give you a little bit of funding to go and do this with us, right? The banks are delighted. They don't need to be. That funding is small change relative to the amount of funding that they can get from a lot of other people. And I think you need to change the thinking about banking to realize that you have opportunities for funding beyond the money funding.
Correct.
The customer base funding is far more valuable. And you've got the customer database, you've got everything that you need to build it out.
Yeah, very good point. So Ajay, let's move now from banking to the UAE. And I know you've been working here for many years now. I mean, the UAE has reportedly a total value of $1.6 billion in loyalty programs, growing at 9% to 10% annually. Now, there are a number of world-class programs here, right? The Emirates Skywards program is absolutely top class. So is the Etihad Guest program. Etisalat, now called EAN, has something called the Smiles program. We talked about EDCV Touchpoints, Mashreq's Vantage program, which are bank-wide loyalty programs. Shukran is a good program from Landmark Group, and I believe we worked on that. MAF Group, the Majlis Al Futtaim Group, has something called Share, which is across all their outlets. Emaar has an amazing program called You by Emaar, and my ex-bank launched a credit card along with You by Emaar, which has done phenomenally well. There's a program called Tamayez, which is supermarkets that are there. Even the government has programs. A program called Faza, a program called Isad, very powerful program. In fact, Isad is across multiple outlets. You get a discount program, 15, 20, 30% discounts from retailers to hospitals to everything. Given experience in the UAE and the region, what, in your view, is the next step of evolution for loyalty programs here in this market?
Well, great question. I think there are many, many interesting things playing out. But before I deal with the UAE specifically, let's just talk about a few trends globally.
Yeah.
Right? So several things have happened. As you know, data and digital have become all pervasive.
Yep.
Right? With that, Shivo, as you know, your Uber, your Facebook, my Uber, my Facebook are totally different.
Yeah.
Your Facebook has your friends, my Facebook has mine. Your Uber has your home, mine has mine.
Yep.
Right? We've gotten used to mass customization. Right? So just keep that in the back of your mind, right?
Yeah.
So what's happening is data and digitization, and the interface of the data and digitization, if you will, of data has been mass customization, right? And that's become a nearly accepted norm, right? Now, let's raise the bar on that, right? And see what else is happening. Marketing, as we spoke about earlier, is getting hammered.
Yep.
For several reasons. Now, the ability to create a marketing program which stands the test of common sense and which is visible in a era where you can't afford Facebook and Google and billboards and nobody reads the newspapers, right? And I wonder why, because all you read about in the newspapers is who killed who and how many people died in this explosion, that,
Yeah.
So you can understand why, let alone the millennials, even people like us wouldn't want to read them, right?
Yeah.
So when you know that medias are drying up and you need to have something which you own,
Yeah.
and you know what has worked is this, right? Even someone like Amazon, right? I would argue a good deal of Amazon's success is the interface, right? Yes, of course the supply chain matters. Yes, of course the prices matter. All that matters.
Yeah, the UX is
absolutely
amazing. Yeah.
Right. And the way it works, and what I mean by UX is the utilization of data in order to drive a UX. And of course, they also use it to drive profitability for themselves. Sometimes I think they get a little carried away by that, but let's keep that aside, right?
Yep.
So what you're seeing is globally, I think these things, and I can go on for the next 10 minutes, but let's just stick with these, and you can go on about the trends. We all know them.
Yep.
Right. So what's happening is people are changing, right? I think, loyalty programs need to change, right, with this. So whether it's in the UAE or in any other part of the world, I think we're going to wake up and smell the coffee.
Okay.
Right. I think the days of my old understanding of loyalty would be that I've got a car, I've got some points, and I got a reward, what we call the CPR of loyalty, card point reward.
Yeah.
Right. That's gone. Right. I mean, the fundamental principles remain true. The ability to leverage data, the ability to do, communication which matters, and all the stuff, the currency that matters, all the stuff that we spoke about earlier. A lot of those fundamentals remain true, but the interpretation of the only way to do it is points, cards, and rewards. I think that is gone.
Okay.
Right? The CPR is not the way to do it anymore. There are many more ways to do it. And I think mass personalization is one. Right? So what I'm suggesting is a lot of the programs in the UAE will get replaced by new programs in the UAE. Right? Either done by the people whom you listed now, or by new people coming and replacing them. Now, if you were to take Smiles as a case in point, I think it's a very interesting, play, where a telco has decided that I want to be in the business of grocery deliveries, restaurants. And how did that happen? I thought you guys were supposed to allow people to talk to each other. Well, yeah, and give them some data. Well, yeah, allow them to communicate. Well, guess what? Do all this stuff as well. Right? And I think they're setting the ground for the way things will work going forward, right? Which is businesses are redefining how they're in the business. And you've got a brand, you've got a customer franchise, you've got a means of talking to them, you've got a large database. Shame on if you don't use it to make disproportionate profit. So to answer your question, if I go to somebody and say, well, give me 15% discount and I'm the local policeman, do I have a choice, sir? Well, we think it's a good idea if you do. Of course, I'm going to do it, right? But if you give me a choice between giving 15% as a discount and giving back 10% as points, and those 10% points would give 15% worth of value, you know which one I pick, right? Because the points don't spoil my brand name. They don't show me as a discounting person, right? They add to my brand, and if I can give disproportionate value as a result of leveraging the currency effectively, well, that's what I'd rather do. So to answer your question, Shubha, I think loyalty everywhere will change, right? As marketing has changed, as advertising has changed, right? These are behemoths. But as with the dinosaurs, the time comes when, you're going to lie down and die. And it's time for the new order, which, the old order changed, yielding way to the new, right? I mean, so that's
So Ajay, the new order also includes AI at our disposal, right? I mean, there's AI changing everything. Will AI change loyalty programs in a significant way?
Absolutely. In fact, sorry to go back to this, but you asked, and I can't resist, but our company is built around that assumption. So our CEO is an AI expert.
Okay.
And the thinking is that when it comes to loyalty, the rest of us get it. The ability to do the overlay of AI is where it starts getting really interesting. Now, I think if you start thinking about the data exhaust, as it were, nowadays, that all of us leave behind us, and the ability to leverage that effectively, right, is really quite interesting. Now, way back in about 2001, 2002, I used to live in the Bay Area, and I created a naive Bayesian company. But if you think about that, and you think about what the impact of that is on marketing, right? You think about a bank. Now, as you know, banks are inordinately fond of analytics and using what they call the next best action. Because you bought this, let me sell you that, right? Now, they're looking at correlation and not causality, right? Now, with naive Bayesians, you're moving more towards having a deeper understanding, right? Okay, forget about the technique. It's not the technique which matters. It's the understanding which matters, right? And I think with that happening, my ability to be more useful to your life using AI as an underpinning for, let's say, a bank program, I think starts getting very interesting.
Okay.
I'll give you an example, Shivu, of what we were trying to solve for in that company. Somebody calls the bank call center and says, I'm a credit card holder, number 12345, and they say, yes, sir, how can I help you? And he says, well, when is my next bill due? And they say, on the 17th, sir. 17th? The 17th, is it? Yeah? Yes, sir, the 17th. Ah, 17th. Okay, 17th, yeah, okay. Is there anything else I can help you with, sir? No, 17th. Yes, sir, 17th. Okay. Puts down the phone. Now, from the bank call center perspective, first call resolution, so FCR happened, tick. Turn around within a minute, tick. So that is good, FCR is good, perfect call. But as a banker, what does it tell you? Either there's an opportunity or there's a risk. I mean, which are both the same thing, right? Which you're not using.
We didn't pick up the queue on the 17th, right?
So if we could listen to calls and say that this is how you should be thinking about your business, there are lots of instances in bank databases which are non-traditional. For example, call center call. For example, how I spend. Let me give you another simple example. Let's take MCCs, right? And within MCCs, there are MIDs. And you remember, again, stats to the normal curve, right? Okay, actually, there's probably stats.
So MCC standing for merchant category codes,
Merchant category codes, and the merchant IDs within that. And get a spread of the average bill amount. At one large extreme, there may be very, very small amounts of money, and small extreme on the other end, there'll be very large amounts of money on the average bill. Okay. Let's call them the 3 sigma bills on this side, which are the large amounts of money being spent. Now, those MIDs of disproportionate interest to the bank. Now, if you see somebody spending at that MID 2 times over, it gives you a lot of predictive value about that person, right? Now, banks tend not to use that kind of data, right? And I'm just giving you a sense of what the opportunities in the database are. And if you find that, let's say, Suvo Sarkar, in his F&B spend, goes and spends twice in a 3 Sigma restaurant in a month, that tells me he's pretty darn well heeled. He's doing all right. But I see no apparel spends at all. Now, Shiva's not walking around stark naked. He's buying his clothes using another card. You get where I'm trying to come? So the predictive ability. Now, how do I convert that if I'm the credit card guy? I've got a very light tool, which is I can give you more points when you spend an apparel. But that's all I can do. Now, imagine what you could do if you own the ecosystem. You follow what I'm getting at, Shiva? Opportunities in the...
So AI can be a game changer for loyalty.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, it will be. It's not can be. It will. It's almost inevitable that so. I very rarely make predictions about the future because I find that I'm almost universally wrong. But in fact, I've got an infallible investment thesis. You want 100% success rate on the stock exchange? Just do the diametric opposite of whatever I do. What I buy, you sell. What I sell, you buy. You're guaranteed you'll make money.
Which is, I'm not asking you any questions from stock market, Ajay, today. But I'm going to ask you now about Ajay Row, the entrepreneur, not Ajay Row, the loyalty expert. Your company, Customer Capital, is the latest in a series of startups that you've launched. I don't know how many, maybe a dozen. Where do you get this startup bug from? And when do you decide, Ajay, to move from startup A, had enough, move to startup B, and then startup B to startup C? How do you decide that? So two questions there.
Yeah, so actually, Shiva, all I've done is done variations on a theme, right? If all I've done is worked in this area of data-driven marketing, and they're all variations.
Okay.
CRM, loyalty, NPS measurement, they're all variations on theme of where data, customer, analytics, technology, where they meet, right? And so everything I've done there. They're just different ways of thinking about this and how to make more money doing exactly the same thing. So that's number one. Number two is every time I've seen that, look...
Sorry, how many startups? You didn't answer the question.
This is the 13th. So even dozen was about right.
About right, okay.
So that was a good guess. On why do I do them, right, is because I enjoy them. For me, being a startup is life. Everything else is waiting. So how do I decide to move on? 9 out of 10 times the decision is made for me by somebody else. Because I think, Shiva, some of us are great managers of large, stable businesses, like yourself, for example. And we can grow them, and we understand how to make it all work, right? Some of us are very good at taking from 0 to 1, maybe 1 to 10. That's me. I'm not good at running something which is large and established. And I think we all learn to recognize the limitations, right? By the age that we're at, we should have, right? And I think for me, what turns me on is creating something out of nothing at all. Litmus World, the last startup, you remember we met on that, is now, it's now about 10 years old, and it's India's largest NPS measurement and management company.
The Litmus, right?
Litmus, and they do about 55 million conversations, as they call them, per month.
Wow.
Over 1 billion. Now, that's a large, stable business. You need a CEO who's good at doing that kind of thing. And touchwood, fortunately, we have one. I've got no role in something like that. I'm good at starting something when it's, 3 guys in a room looking at a presentation deck and say, how the hell do we make this happen? Get on the first few clients, get the first few customers in, start that revenue engine.
Correct.
And then, somebody will decide for me, or typically somebody will decide for me, or I'll decide for myself that it's time we went on and did another new thing. And let's give it to the big boys now that it's become big. Let's give it to the adults to run it. And I go back to playing in the, in the playpen, which is doing another startup.
Amazing. Keeps you young, right, Ajay? Now, you're also an avid sailor, Ajay. You own a boat or a couple of boats in Mumbai Harbour, and I've been privileged enough to go on a recent sailing trip with you not too long back. Tell us about the joys of sailing and if there are any perils in what you do every weekend.
So, honestly, in Bombay Harbour, we're spoilt, right? You're almost never at peril. I've only been in any kind of danger maybe once or twice.
Okay.
Right? And they were pretty terrifying. But if you know what you're doing, by and large, you're all right in Bombay Harbour. Because, we don't go out in the cyclones and the monsoons. We only sail when, and you've been there. You know how peaceful it is.
Yeah.
And I think for me, sailing has been. So I was a very, very competitive person, as you may recall, right, back in the day.
Yeah.
And when I started sailing, I said, this is one thing I'm going to do not to compete, but I'm going to do it to just be at peace with myself. It's almost like meditation.
Okay.
I'm alone on the water, or I'm with a close friend, like you and another one of our batchmates, you know, the three of us. That's what it's all about, right?
Correct.
Just friendship and enjoying yourself, and, you know, there's no tension, there's no stress. It's just, it's beautiful on the water, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I love.
Ajay, my final question to you. You have a 20,000 title library, which you created over the last, 40, 50 years. How do you choose the next title on your library? How do you decide the next book?
It's grown a bit, huh? It's about 25,000
Oh
now.
my God.
So yeah, it's quite a lot.
Are you going to make it public one day, or what? Is it only for you to read?
You know, I've given away so many of my things which I thought I'd never give away. So I wouldn't say never.
So when do we expect to see a book on loyalty by Ajay Row? Is that coming soon?
Well, so I tried, and my friend Shainesh, Professor Shainesh, and I in Bangalore, and we're going to work with Professor Jagdish Seth, whom you may remember from the Howard Sheth.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. So the three of us were going to do a book on loyalty. They'd bring the academic underpinning, and I'd give the practicalities. And it died a natural death. Fast forward a couple of years, and Shanish asked me to do a chapter for a book which has been done by him and somebody else. So I did that chapter.
Okay.
And I decided to buy a copy of the book for my mother. And the book cost 11,000 rupees, which is
really,
you convert that into dollars. That's a
lot of money,
fair amount of money, right?
Yeah,
$150. So my mom can do without that. Gonna have to take my word for it that I wrote a chapter in that book. Anyway, so I do plan at some point. So what I do, Shiva, I'm not sure if, but I do these articles every so often.
Yeah, I've read them.
I've done tons of articles about whatever I know.
Yeah.
And I try and share that.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of courses on loyalty where I invite people and I do a little video recording. And if anybody asks for it because they want people to attend it, I send it to them. And so I've done a fair amount, and all these courses I do at the IIMs and other management schools all over the world. I record some of them and I share that as well. So I do whatever I can to share, but I do need to get around to writing a book.
We look forward to that, Ajay. And on that note, thank you very much for your time this afternoon at Money Majlis. You've been incredible. I think me and my listeners have learned so much about loyalty in the last 1.5 hours. It's absolutely amazing. So thank you for that. So we look forward to getting more wisdom from you in future episodes, and all the best with Customer Capital, your 13th startup, like you said. May it grow from strength to strength, and may your sailing be even more exciting in the future.
Thank you so much, Shivu. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you all for listening.
Money Majlis is proudly supported by Aqua Now, the premier crypto as a service provider, now building in partnership with the top financial institutions in the Middle East. Discover more at aquanow.com.
Money Majlis is brought to you by E&, a global technology group.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Intellect Design Arena, driving digital adoption in banking and insurance.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Live Digital Bank, powered by Emirates NBD. Trust and innovation combined.
Money Majlis is brought to you by Network International, the leading digital payments technology company in the Middle East and Africa.
So that's it for today's episode of Money Majlis. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ajay Row, the guru of loyalty and my MBA classmate. Of course, a friend for 40 years. As a token of our gratitude for his time, I presented Ajay with a $1,000 Money Majlis gift card, and he chose to contribute that to Jaipur Foot. Interestingly, Ajay's father, many years back, was involved with the same charity, Jaipur Foot, through his organization, Anga Karuna Kendriya. Time has come full circle, and today Ajay chose to give his gift card to the same cause, Jaipur Foot. Thank you, Ajay. You as a listener can also contribute your gift card by simply logging on to give.moneymajlis.com. Please join our movement of giving today and contribute your $50 gift card, compliments of my sponsors, to one of the 6 pre-selected causes. Thank you so much for making the effort. Till next time, stay well and do good.